South Africa was a British and Dutch colonized country with always a white leader. In 1948, an election was held which the National Party introduced the government system of apartheid. The election gave voting rights to only one-fourth of the population, which this minority was made of only whites. The South African National Party's introduction of apartheid in 1948 provoked brutal abuses, widespread killings, and racial segregation amongst people of all races in South Africa. For 46 years, people had to suffer under apartheid until the heroic Nelson Mandela, alongside with the ANC, African National Congress, opposed apartheid and brought this tragedy to an end. This was a triumph for human rights and the unification of South Africa.
The word apartheid means separate. It means separation by race, by color of your skin. So that is what the word apartheid means. It means a system of apartheid. But it was a very brutal law because it didn't only divide people on the basis of race, it divided people in many other ways. It was a form of social engineering that dehumanized non-white people. And that's the tragedy of apartheid. That's why in the United Nations it was declared a crime against humanity.
This segregation was not only between the whites and the blacks, but it was with all races. The racial segregation was an instigator for white supremacy and ethnological inferiority. The apartheid law affected each and every aspect of a person's life. Every race had separate facilities, transports, buildings, schools, and even entrances. Owning land or business in a white area was forbidden. Crossing over to other racial areas was banned. Starting in 1948, a legislation was created to enforce and further define racial segregation. People would be separated into 4 racial groups, which included blacks, whites, coloreds, and Asians.
Our people are not asking for yachts. They are not asking for holiday houses. They are not asking for thousands of rands in a safe deposit. Our people ask for water, for toilets, for jobs, for taps, for rights to health, for living wages. Those are the things that our people expect of us. And we have no business. In fact, we have no desire to begin to entertain any notions of scaling down those expectations.
Mandela joined the ANC 2 years after he graduated from college. In his early years in the ANC, Mandela supported non-violence resistance against apartheid. He led multiple non-violent marches and protests.
But we didn't just protest for the fun of it. We protested for very good reasons, because protests had a risk. The police could kill you, you could get shot, you could get arrested, you could be put into prison. And in those days there was a law where they could detain you without trial. They could detain you if they were suspect, or if you were a suspect for trying to overthrow the state, as they would call it. They would detain you for 6 months, a year, without trial, and nobody will know where you are. And they would torture you.
Though when the whites' government's brutal and abusive actions escalated, Mandela had to change his position in the ANC. After 69 protesters were killed by government troops at Sharpeville in 1960, Mandela instantly abandoned his original goal in the ANC.
For us to continue talking peace and non-violence against a government whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people.
I despise them because they were despised by the entire world. They dressed in beautiful suits, silk shirts and silk ties, but they were beautiful outside and full of evil inside.
The outside world's reaction to apartheid was widespread, especially in the United Kingdom. Some countries tried to weaken and cripple the apartheid system due to its cruel and racist impacts it had on the people.
Very brutal. They used to put the dogs on us. The police dogs used to bite us. They were very vicious dogs. They were trained. In fact, they were trained to kill people. So there were always risks in a protest. But there's always good memories out of a protest. There are always people that will stand out in a protest, that will do something brave, that will do something extraordinary. Because all people wanted was to be treated better. They wanted to be treated like human beings. They wanted to be respected.
Nelson Mandela, alongside with the ANC, led protests and campaigns opposing apartheid. While their events were flowing nicely, Nelson Mandela and 8 other members of the ANC were convicted of sabotage and conspiracy to overthrow the government. This resulted in a life sentence to jail on Robben Island. During time in prison, Mandela sought outside help from the international community. Numerous countries supported and helped Mandela in the fight against apartheid. This included excluding South Africa in the Olympics, putting embargoes on South Africa by many countries, and the suspension of South Africa's membership in the United Nations. Many countries like the United Kingdom had marches and protests in dispute of apartheid. International and domestic tensions started to grow, and South Africa became very isolated due to its abusive government system. South Africa was also at risk of a racial civil war because of the system that divided people. This put pressure on President F.W. de Klerk.
The steps that have been decided are the following. The prohibition of the African National Congress, the Pan-Africanist Congress, the South African Communist Party and a number of subsidiary organizations is being rescinded.
After 27 years imprisoned, Nelson Mandela was freed on February 11, 1990. This was joy to the people of South Africa because it brought hope and encouragement to South Africans that there is still a way out of the problems. Nelson Mandela brought light to the people. After the release, Nelson Mandela and the ANC negotiated with the National Party, resulting in a democratic election. This election gave way to all the races in South Africa to have a voice. On May 10, 1994, Nelson Mandela was the first black man elected as president of South Africa. This was a triumphant moment for South Africans because it meant that equality between all races would be justified. In 1995, the TRC, Truth, Reconciliation and Commission, was created. This was a crucial component for South Africa's transition to a full democratic country. The aim of the TRC was to combat impunity and recreate a culture of accountability, and most importantly to uncover truth about gross human rights violations and assist families of the victims in getting closure. The TRC was meant to heal the wounds of South Africa's past and teach the people to forgive. This promoted national unity and reconciliation in a spirit of understanding, which transcends the conflicts and divisions of the past.
But so that we can move into the future together, the choice of our nation is not whether the past should be revealed, but rather to ensure that it comes to be known in a way which promotes reconciliation and peace.
It has been a rough road fighting against apartheid, but today, South Africa is a democratic country where people of all races are free and have equal human rights.